mysticism about it, that it would be fairies dancing in a circle at night. That's why there's nothing growing, or UFOs landing at night.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in today. So for today's piece, I'm going to share with you a story that I did for BBC Travel called A Mystery in the World's Oldest Desert, The Mysterious Fairy Circles of Namibia. Before we get into the full piece, I'm going to share with you guys my travel reflections and the story behind the story, so you guys can get an inside scoop as to what really happened behind the scenes. So looking back, this is probably one of my favorite stories that I've had in Namibia. And that says a lot because I've had a lot of like really interesting experiences along the way. So what happened was 2 years ago, I was with my guide in Namibia and we were traveling to this research facility. We were going there to interview scientists about rainfall in the Namib Desert and about these mysterious formations called fairy circles, which you guys will learn about in the full piece shortly. So anyway, I'm with my guide Mornay. We're driving through the desert, and this is one of the most remote places in Namibia, which is already a really remote country. So we're like 200 miles from the nearest small town. We go to this research facility and we have to camp out there for a couple of days because there's like no hotels. Forget about hotels. There's no accommodations other than this campground. So cool. So we get to this research facility. It's early evening and I'm ready to get unpacked, to get all set up, and get prepared because we have a big filming schedule the next day. So my guide Mornay helps me set up my tent. I was like, let me go scope out the area, get a sense of where we are, and do a little filming and take some photographs. So after dinner, I go for a little wander in the sand dune area, which is absolutely beautiful. And I notice a footprint of some kind of animal. It looked like some kind of hyena. I took a photo of it, and when I go back to the campground area, I show it to my guide. I'm like, what is this? He's like, yeah, that's probably a hyena track. So I'm like, oh, okay, that's good to know. He didn't seem too bothered by it. I'm like, I guess this is par for the course. He's like, don't worry, I'll be fine. Great. So evening rolls around and sun falls. I'm like, okay, it's time to go to bed. I'm super excited to get a good night's sleep, get ready for, this big filming day the next day, right? Beautiful night, laying in bed, about to go to sleep, and I hear a hyena. I'm like, oh my God, I'm in the middle of the desert. There's my guide on the other side of the campground. There's no one else in the campground. You've got a few scientists that live at this facility, and they're a couple kilometers away. So I'm like, oh, okay, this is really cool. I'm just in the desert in my tent with my camera equipment and a coyote. Or hyena. So anyway, I'm like, okay, just relax, stay calm. And then all of a sudden, boom! I'm like, what is going on? And mind you, let me just preface this. We are in the driest desert in the world. The Namib is one of the driest places on the planet, okay? So just keep that in mind. Now, that boom was a torrential downpour. The rain just like a bucket just fell out of the sky and it's coming down. I'm like, oh my God, what do I do now? So I've got all this camera equipment. Like, you do not want that getting wet. That's like bad news. So I quickly zipper up the canvas in my tent. So I'm sitting there for a while and I'm like, I don't know what's gonna happen. So I was scared. So I ended up booking it out of the tent. And I go over to this communal campground area. There's like this overhang, there's some grills underneath. So I go for shelter and I'm huddled there. It's not super cold, but it's kind of like, it's chilly. So I'm there waiting for the storm to pass. And my guide had left the light on in that area. I'm sitting there and I have no idea what time it is. Like, time means nothing in the desert at this moment. You're in the middle of nowhere and it's just dark and raining with like one light. So all of a sudden I look up at the light and I see bugs. I personally get terrified of like a small spider, and these bugs are not normal. They're like the size of my head. They're definitely the size of my fist, for real. So this I can't take. So I'm like, Mornay, please come out. I'm screaming bloody murder. He comes out. He's like, okay, Kate, what's going on? I'm like, it's raining a lot and there's these bugs. And he was taken aback. He's like, oh my God. He's like, oh, that's right. They come out in the rain. So Mornay, he's this big guy. He like tries to step on one and it doesn't die at all. So sure enough, then he runs back to the car. I'm like, where's he going? He comes back from the car with a machete. So he takes the machete and he kills the bug. He's like, okay, this is what we got to do. I'm like, great. So I'm in Namibia, in the desert, you know, in the middle of nowhere with my guide with a machete, these massive bugs, and somehow, somewhere in the distance, there are hyenas, and there's a torrential downpour. I'm like, I just wanted to come here and film, meet these scientists, talk about the desert, like, what's going on? Sure enough, the rain starts to subside, and Mornay is like, okay, I'm gonna go back to bed, so what I'll do is I'll give you the machete. I'm like, what am I gonna do with a machete? He's like, well, you know, just in case, you know, you get the bugs in your tent, like, you know, God forbid, the hyenas. He's like, you should be fine. They definitely shouldn't come anywhere near us, but, you know, just in case. I'm like, oh, great. Okay. Definitely good to know that I'm going to sleep great tonight, right? So anyway, I take the machete and I'm like, and at this point, luckily the rain subsided quite a bit. So I go back to my tent, let me be in peace tonight. Please, no hyenas, no bugs. God forbid the bugs, you know, worst thing. And hopefully I can get some sleep. So I was fine. The rain subsided, there were no bugs, and there were no hyenas. Definitely was not the experience I was expecting to have, but, you know, I pushed on through. I ended up meeting the scientists, interviewing them, learning a lot about Namibia, about the desert in particular. So I just kind of like pushed on through, and it was a 2-week tour, so we did quite a lot of traveling, and I kind of left that experience behind me and pushed on. But when I think about it today, I think what that experience means to me is that we just have to be resilient. No matter what happens, like, things are always going to put a kink in your plans. You go into life, go into a particular experience with an expectation of what's going to happen. You plan for that and you say, I'm going to do X and this is going to produce Y, right? Never happens. Never. So I think it's all about rolling with the punches, going with the flow. And looking back at it, I feel like we just kind of have to go into situations with a good attitude and knowing that we're going to create something really wonderful against all odds. So that's my story behind the story, my travel reflection for today. Now I'm going to cut to the full piece so you can see the mysterious fairy circles of Namibia.
Fairy circles are these enigmatic features that you find. It looks like a geomorphic feature. It's a circular area that is bare, there's nothing on it, and then there's a ring of grass around it. You know. When you look at it from the air or from high points, it almost looks like measles spots.
It's circles in the desert where nothing grows, and they can become smaller and bigger depending on the rainfall you receive that year.
From Angola in the north, where the Namib starts, to South Africa in the south, and it's along that edge of the Namib desert that you find fairy circles. The Namib is one of the driest places on Earth.
This mysticism about it, that it would be fairies dancing in a circle at night, that's why there's nothing growing, or UFOs landing at night.
They found in the dunes, they found in the gravel plains. And that is one of the enigmas of fairy circles. You do often have termites that's associated with fairy circles. The suggestion is that they're actually causing them and that they create these fairy circles in order to harvest water and nutrients from them. The big competing theory is that of vegetation self-organization, where root competition with grasses and causes these bare patches to appear as a reservoir for water and nutrients from within this particular area. Where you have fairy circles, it tends to be only a single species of vegetation that occurs, which seems to be one of the important attributes of fairy circles. As soon as you have mixed vegetation with different species occurring, then you don't have circles anymore. It may be toxic byproducts from the euphorbia bushes that we have. There was some remnants of this plants within the fairy circles. I think personally in the end what we are going to find is that there's going to be a whole combination of factors.
The fairy circles still arouse a lot of attention because it's one of those things that we haven't explained 100% yet. So there's still a lot of mysticism and awe around it.
Sitting with something that should be so easy to explain and yet finding an acceptable explanation where you can show what causes it is proving surprisingly difficult.
Thanks for checking out the mysterious fairy circles of Namibia. I hope you enjoyed the piece. If you have not already done so, please subscribe to my channel at the link down below so you guys can get notifications about new posts that are coming out. There will be one tomorrow. And also, I would highly suggest checking out bbctravel.com so you guys can check out more of my work there and also see the work of other amazing travel journalists. All right, guys, that's it for today. Have a wonderful day or evening, wherever you are in the world, and see you soon.